So welcome back to the third of our podcasts on Nolan Business Solutions ERM module. Today we're going to look at performing common tasks on member records. In previous podcasts we've looked at what ERM is and we've looked at what the member record holds. So my name's Colin Smith and I'm the Technical Director of Nolan Business Solutions.
My name is Andrew Butler. I'm a consultant at Nolan Business Solutions.
So Andrew and I today are going to go through inside the product and we're going to look at those common tasks that we can perform against a member record. So we jumped into our ERM module and we're at the ERM home dashboard. From here at the top on the menu bar, we can go into our members. And if you've watched the second in the series of podcasts, you'll know that there's different views on the members records. And today we're looking at the active students view. So, Andrew, how can we look up a student and how can we quickly get to a particular student that we've just previously been to?
Okay, as we kind of went through in the last podcast, we know that we can search for a record based on his or her name and or member ID. But what we also have a feature here is something called recently viewed, and you can see here all of the records which we have essentially clicked onto for our user, and we can see that our last record was Simon Joel, which is the user that we used in our last podcast. So you can click into that student there, and that'll then take you into the student record.
So it's a really quick way of just getting around the system for the people that you've recently looked at.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So last time we looked at the details of what's on this particular form, which is the contact information form. So today we're going to talk about some of the common activities that we can perform. So where do I pick those up?
So next to the user's name at the top, we've got the drop down, which then shows you all of the what's called common entities next to the particular member in question.
So all of these relate specifically now to Simon Joel?
Correct, yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay, so I can kind of work my way through. We won't necessarily go into each one, but we'll go into a few of them just to kind of show you the makeup, but kind of essentially they do the same kind of thing, but yeah. So the first one, we have the activities. So this is one of the things that we covered before, where we can store a particular activity against a student. We can also store their academic achievements, which has been obtained by the various courses. We can also, as we mentioned previously, we can store multiple addresses for a record. So if we just go into the addresses one, what we have the ability to, first off, is create a new address, and we can see a pop-up window open here. And on the address name, we can see we can store these different types of student addresses. So we can store it for a doctor, emergency, next of kin, future addresses, a work address. So you choose the type there, and you basically then just fill out the information. Once we press save and close, a new line will then be shown on that student record. And if you remember when we looked at the Porter's Lodge form, we had the next of kin address. If you chose next of kin on that drop down, that will then show on that Porter's Lodge on the next of kin view.
Great.
So we can actually also store awards and assign that a particular award achieved by the student against the record. So within the awards, you can you would have like all of your award types set up, and you can also then assign a kind of a monetary value if there were one kind of achieved from that. So you can store that against the award in question, the dates that it was obtained. If you have the actual award kind of printed out, you can actually also upload that onto the award as well. So, you know, again, getting all that information in one place is kind of the pinnacle.
That's really handy, because I know some companies offer awards to students that cover things like their books,
Yep.
or maybe cover some areas around their accommodation, so we can record that in the system that they've been awarded that benefit.
Yep.
Great.
So kind of some of the other important kind of common extensions is that we have the connections. So this is, again, what we briefly went over in our last podcast. You are able to connect one record to another. Okay. Typically, you would do that for assigning a tutor to a particular student in question. So again, you have that kind of full visibility of, you know, who is kind of dealing with that student, and you can also see it on the flip side. So if you go into the tutor, you can then see what students have been assigned to that tutor. So you have the kind of the one-to-many, many-to-one relationship, which you can kind of, you've got that visualization again on the system. So
does the tutor have to be as a member in our database?
Correct, yeah. So in order for that to work, yes, it has to be a member. But if you recall, we can set on the admin side, we can create that as a record, sign them as an administrator, and on the drop down we can say, yes, this is a tutor.
Okay.
Courses. So this is obviously quite a well-used one. We can assign a course to a student record. Typically, you could see more than one course, because you can actually, once the course is finished, you'll see there we've got this active flag. It will no longer be active, but we've got, again, the visualization of all the courses that that particular student has been on whilst at the establishment.
So that's handy. So I can see that Simon Joel is doing a DPhil in English language and literature. The course is 4 years long.
Yep.
He started in Michaelmas 2017, so he's going to complete in Trinity term.
Correct.
2021. And there's the fees. 6 fees have been issued to Simon against that course. That's really handy information.
Yep. Dietary preferences. So again, we briefly covered this before. So if there is a particular allergy which a student has, you can assign a dietary preference against a student record. Disciplinaries. Again, so if there were any disciplinaries for a student, such as, you know, if they're suspended or kind of been expelled, you can assign a particular disciplinary record against a student record.
Yeah.
Education history. So this is a relatively new addition onto ERM, is that we can now assign an education history record against a student. So you can basically assign the educational institution, which is will be the college name or kind of school.
It might be their high school or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like you will then set the date from and to, any contacts. So if you did want to kind of maybe double check on that that score, you can have contact on that establishment and say, look, you know, we would just want to confirm that this is actually the case. Mm-hmm. And you also have the results as well. So in there you can obviously see like the A star or Bs or Cs obtained for that education history for that student record. Other kind of things you can see here, we've got the group memberships. So that is any kind of membership groups that they're a part of. You can create that as a record and assign it to the student in question.
It might be the debating society or something like that.
Yep, exactly. So if they're the chair for that, that's where you assign the position and assign it to the particular membership. We then have medical history. So again, we can any kind of medical information which needs to be assigned to a student, we can do that in here. So you can see the different types. We've got allergy, disability, condition, or other. But again, if there were a particular type which you're always finding yourself needing to put in, you can add to that list. We can then put the medical issue and then kind of tick the relevant box for that medical. There is a notes section, so again, you can actually scan in any medical certificates or medical information linked to that kind of medical which you're about to create against the record.
So this might be, some of this information might be quite sensitive. Can we restrict what information people see on the system?
Yes, so that is done by each user will be assigned a particular role, and within that role is where it defines if you can see that medical extension. We will go through how to maybe maintain the roles going forward in a later podcast.
Okay.
So we also have the a member funding on here, research contracts. So again, we covered this very briefly previously, but we can create a research center and then a research type and then assign a research contract to a particular student. We then have the room allocations. So here we can assign a student to a particular room. But obviously, the rooms will need to be created in the buildings first off before you can do that. Student fees. So, and here we can see all of the fees which have been kind of generated by the student attending the establishment in question. So we can see here we've got three lines. So we've got the amounts in there, the detail of the fee, how it's going to be funded. So we can see all of these are self-funded. So the student is going to be kind of paying this themselves.
Okay, so that's an amount per term.
Correct.
In this case.
Yeah.
But this is not an accounting system. It holds details about those fees.
Yeah.
And then we can integrate that into a finance system for the actual billing and collection of that money. Right. Okay.
Okay. So a couple of things we got in here is visas. You have something called visas and visa monitoring. So basically, you can create the visa type first off, and then you've got separate visa monitoring, which are kind of the ways that you monitor the actual visa in question. And again, you can assign and attach records to that visa as well. So once you do have the monitoring in place, you can actually assign the evidence for that particular kind of monitor and have that on
we've
as
got
well.
lots of international overseas students. I just imagine it's really handy being able to see whose visa might be expiring soon.
Exactly, and what you can do, for instance, which we will cover later on for advanced fines and filters, but you could have a list of all expiring visas in the next 6 months in a view, and then you can have things triggering off that view. But you have kind of, you've always got that visibility, and then you've got the system which can alert you the fact that a visa might be coming up in the next X amount of months or days.
Good.
Okay, so we also have cases as well. So any cases which has been raised by the student will be shown here. So one of the previous examples we gave was if a student has a problem with an item in their room, so for instance the sink as we used earlier, this is where a member of staff will create the case on the student's behalf, and then they can assign that case to a particular user, being the maintenance person or maybe the porter's lodge, so they can then deal with it themselves. And then once that's going to be dealt with, you can then close the case down. But again, you have the visibility of all of the cases being logged for this particular student in question, because it might be that the student says, right, okay, what's the status of my broken sink? They can go onto here and say, yep, it's been assigned to X and it's going to be dealt on this particular date.
Great. Good. I see also we've got the abilities there around about marketing lists, so we could add Simon to a marketing list and into a campaign. So if we know that he's a member of the debating society, we could create a campaign around the debating society and email them out straight from the system. That's great. I see there's also some processes at the end, which I guess is around workflow, which we're going to be covering in a future podcast.
Correct, yeah. So they're basically to kind of show you any processes which has been run on that student record. But yeah, exactly that. We'll cover it in a later podcast about how to create processes and how to run processes as well.
So what we've seen is there's a lot of common activities and processes and areas that we can hold information, look at information relating to our student in today's podcast. So I hope that's been informative, and we look forward to you joining us on our next podcast in the ERM series.